My name's Rachel Monroe. I'm 34 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had the kind of marriage people envied. A stable home, a husband who said he adored me, a life that looked, from the outside, almost perfect. We lived in a quiet Seattle suburb, a cozy 2-story house with white shutters and a maple tree in the yard. I worked from home as a freelance designer. My husband, Ethan, was a project manager for a film production company, always traveling between Seattle and Los Angeles for work. I didn't love the distance, but I trusted him, or I thought I did. That Tuesday morning, I was sipping coffee, halfway through editing a client's logo, when my phone buzzed. The notification said, "Ethan." I smiled until I opened the message. "Just married my coworker." "You're pathetic, BTW." I froze. My mind couldn't process the words. Married? Coworker? Pathetic? The screen blurred through my tears, but my thumbs moved on their own. "Cool," I typed, and hit send. "Cool." That's all I could say while my world collapsed. For 10 minutes, I stared at my reflection in the black screen. My hands trembled. My breathing turned shallow. My husband of 8 years had just texted me that he married someone else, and that I was pathetic. I felt something break inside me. Not just my heart, something deeper. Something I couldn't name yet. Then came another message. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon. Don't touch the house. It's under my name." That's when I realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was a full-on ambush. The house, the savings, everything we built together, he was taking it all. But instead of screaming, I laughed. A hollow, cracked laugh that scared even me, because in that moment, something inside me shifted. The woman who'd waited, supported, forgiven, and trusted, she was gone. And the one left behind? She was done being quiet. If you're watching this, tell me where you're from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe, because what happened next changed everything. I wasn't just going to get even. I was going to make Ethan regret underestimating me. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't even call him. I just sat there on his leather couch, staring at the framed wedding photo above the fireplace. We looked so happy. He was whispering something in my ear, and I was laughing like I had the whole world in my hands. Funny thing? I can't even remember what he said that day, but I remember how it felt. Safe, loved, permanent. Now all I felt was rage. Hot, electric, and quiet. By midnight, I had already packed a bag. Not because I was leaving, but because I was preparing for war. Before I tell you what I did next, you need to understand something about Ethan. He wasn't always like this. At least not at first. We met when I was 25. He was charming, confident, funny. The kind of man who'd bring you coffee at work just because you looked stressed. He said I was the calm to his storm. He said he'd never met anyone who believed in him like I did, and maybe that was the problem. I believed in him too much. When he got his job offer in Los Angeles 3 years ago, I told him to go for it. "We'll make the distance work," I said. "We're strong enough." He kissed my forehead, smiled, and said, "You're my forever, Rach." He lied, because forever apparently lasted until he met Madison, his new coworker, a woman I'd only seen twice, once at a Christmas party and once in a photo on his phone that he claimed was just the team. Now she was his wife, and I was just the leftover. But here's the part Ethan didn't know. When we bought the house, I had quietly added a clause to the mortgage contract, a legal detail that tied his name and assets to mine in ways he didn't fully understand. He thought he owned me. He didn't realize how much I already owned of him. I wasn't ready to strike yet. Revenge is like painting. You don't rush the strokes. You plan. You sketch. You make it beautiful. So I did what any pathetic woman would do. I smiled, made some tea, opened my laptop, and started drafting an email to his company's HR department. Let's just say Madison's new husband wasn't quite as single as she believed, because if he wanted to start his new life in Los Angeles, I was going to make sure it burned before it even began. I sat at my kitchen table at the only light coming from my laptop and the street lamp outside. Silence wrapped the house like a tight cloak. I opened a fresh email draft. Subject: concern. Possible workplace relationship and conflict of interest. My fingers hovered. Then I typed. Short, factual, cold. I didn't want drama. I wanted an investigation. I hit send. And then I waited, like dropping a stone into a lake and watching the ripples stretch out. Emails were the beginning. Because revenge, I knew now, was a business. It required documents, evidence, timing, patience, a plan that looked harmless until it hit. I called an old friend from law school, Maya, who now handled corporate contracts. Her voice was flat at first, sleepy, then alert. I told her what Ethan texted. I told her about the message saying a lawyer would be contacting me. I left out the tears. I kept the facts. Did you sign anything recently? She asked. No, I lied. Or rather, no new signatures. But he's transferred a bunch of stuff to LA accounts. Maya was quiet. Send me the mortgage paperwork, she said. Now, while I waited for her to comb through hours of legalese I'd barely skimmed years ago, I did what I do best, I observed. I watched Ethan's social media from the quiet of my browser. I watched the photos he posted with Madison Airport smiles, a ring, a sunset dinner. He curated happiness like a skilled gardener. But the comments and tags told a different story. Subtle, revealing. I called the bank under the guise of a question about an automatic payment. The customer service rep was polite and useless. They couldn't tell me much without the other account holder, but they did confirm transfers scheduled, regular and recent, regular, consistent, intentional. I hired a private investigator. Yes, I did that. I'm not above spending money to expose lies when the alternative is staying small and broken. His name was Tom, and he smelled like cigarettes and regret. He had a habit of saying too much. People always think they know their spouse. They don't, Tom dug. He found receipts in Los Angeles for furniture shipments, a separate mailbox, a shell company registered under a name that pointed back to Ethan's manager, connections that braided together like poison ivy. That night, I printed everything: contracts, emails, bank statements, flight logs, photos. I spread them across the dining table like a war map. It felt sickening and exhilarating all at once. Every paper was proof that my life, our life, was not what I thought. It was a performance for the cameras, a heist executed behind my back. I didn't sleep. I planned. If Ethan thought he could disappear into LA and start anew, he was sorely mistaken. I picked up my phone and stared at his contact. My thumb hovered. I didn't call. Not yet, because patience, because timing. Because the best part of any revenge is when the person who wronged you thinks they're untouchable right before everything collapses. I learned quickly that loud fury gets you nowhere. Whispers burn better. Slow, hot, invisible until it destroys the thing inside. Maya called at dawn. You did good, she said. Her voice was a scalpel clean, efficient. There's a clause Ethan didn't notice. It ties his film company bonuses to the mortgage payments if he moves his primary residence. Meaning? I asked, because I wanted her to say the word that tasted like victory. Meaning he legally can't claim the house without triggering an audit. I breathed like someone who'd been underwater. Air hit my lungs sharp and terrible. Relief and a new kind of rage pulled together. Next, I did something childish and necessary. I changed the locks. Not out of spite, out of safety. He told me not to touch the house. I smiled at that instruction and walked right into the locksmith's greasy van like a woman with a mission. The locksmith asked no questions. He smelled like motor oil and knew the look of people who wanted to close doors on their past. While I waited for the law to do its quiet work, I played a different game. I sent a benign-seeming email to Ethan's production company's general inbox. Nothing accusatory. Concern, it said. Possible financial irregularities associated with recent relocation. I attached a screenshot, just one that implied a transfer that didn't line up with reported expenses. That was enough to start a string of small administrative alarms. I learned to weaponize bureaucracy. An HR investigation, a finance review, a compliance officer who asked questions in a tone that implied consequences. I watched Ethan's social media from the safety of my living room. He posted pictures with Madison, the kind of pictures lovers take when they want witnesses. Vacation sunsets, silly rings, staged laughter. They were loud. They were also clumsy, like someone trying too hard to prove a lie. Tom, the private investigator, texted progress updates in the kind of shorthand only men who drink at odd hours use. Manager's shell company, he typed. Invoices. LA mailing address. Madison's email linked. His messages were blunt, brutal. They made me feel like an arsonist who could finally see the blueprints of the building. I didn't tell my sister. Not yet. I didn't tell my mother. Not yet. There's power in holding a secret that grows teeth. Let them see you smile, then strike. Let them think your life is breaking while you assemble the tools to make theirs break first. Night fell. I spread documents on the dining table again. Contracts, transfer logs, printed social posts, a map of flight itineraries with circles in red. My handwriting small, neat connected lines like a conspiracy theorist. It looked manic. It felt precise. I called Ethan. My voice was calm. We need to talk about the mortgage, I said. Tomorrow, noon, here, he laughed. A short, practiced laugh that always meant he felt safe. Make it quick, he said. I hung up and poured a glass of wine. I didn't drink it. I liked how the glass felt in my hand, heavy, intentional. I was ready to watch him think he still had the upper hand. He didn't know I'd already started the fire. Noon felt like a verdict. Sunlight slid through the blinds and hard bars across the kitchen table. I watched the clock like someone watching a countdown. My heart hammered not from fear, but from a fierce, bright anticipation. He walked in like he owned the place. Ethan always carried himself as if rooms folded around him. He had a suitcase, a smile. Madison's shoulder in one of his latest photos still littered his phone screen when I imagine it. He looked different, cleaner, sharper, like La had polished him. You look good, he said, because he knows how to disarm with a compliment. It used to make me melt. Today it made me angrier. I retained counsel, I said. My voice was steady. Maya will be joining us later, he snorted. You actually think a lawyer will change anything? I texted you, Rachel. I told you. It's over. His words were small grenades. I kept my hands folded on the table. I would not hand him the spectacle he wanted. Ethan, I said softly, do you remember the clause in the mortgage? He blinked like he'd been caught mid-lie. What clause? The laugh bubbling in his throat was thin. Come on, we signed the papers together. You know this. Don't be dramatic. I slid a printed copy across the table. Read. He scanned it with the casual arrogance of someone who believed his victory inevitable. His face shifted, first confusion, then irritation, then a flash of real panic I hadn't yet seen. You forged this, he spat. You can't. Not forged, I interrupted. Planned. By me. When we refinanced, I insisted we add a clause tying relocation bonuses to primary residence. You never read the fine print. Pride is a dangerous thing. It keeps liars alive longer than they deserve. He stood up. You're being petty. A lawyer's car pulled into the drive. Maya was punctual. She moved through the kitchen door like a judge entering a courtroom. The conversation turned. Legal terms, quiet threats. His lawyer's voice was oily and practiced. We'll file, he said. You're not entitled to Maya's calm cut through him. If you attempt to remove assets or claim the house as primary residence without notifying the mortgage holder, you trigger an audit. With the transfers we've documented, that could lead to severe penalties to both your company and your personal accounts. Ethan's color drained. He looked like a man watching a house of cards built with his ego begin to wobble. He left with Madison's name on his lips and a promise I wouldn't hear the end of. He thought leaving would silence me. He thought distance would protect him, but leaving only pushed him into the path of the ripples I'd set in motion. I'd pulled threads. The fabric was starting to fray. That night, I watched the newsfeed. A small headline. A compliance review opened at his company. A rumor thread started online. Nothing decisive, but the tremor had begun. I slept poorly. Mostly, I dreamed of burning bridges. Waking felt like stepping into a battlefield I'd already mapped. I was no longer the shocked wife. I was a strategist, a quiet avenger. The audit was like a slow drumbeat. Not loud, not immediate, but relentless. Maya called first thing in the morning. "They've frozen a couple of accounts," she said. Her voice was sharp with satisfaction. "Compliance flagged transfers to that LA mailbox. They're digging." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Relief tasted like pennies, bitter and metallic, but it was relief nonetheless. Ethan texted. Short, defensive. "What did you do?" I replied with one word. "What?" he called. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to his practiced anger and felt nothing but a cold calm. The man who'd once held my hand through thunder now sounded like a stranger yelling through glass. Rumors started to bloom. Small ones at first. A thread on an industry forum. A comment on his company's LinkedIn post. Someone noting an internal review. It spread like mildew. Slow, ugly, impossible to scrub out completely. Madison posted a picture of flowers with a caption about new beginnings. She looked luminous. Her smile was the kind people staged for photos. I recognized the polish. I felt something like pity, then fury. How many times had I polished someone else's life with my hands while my own was being ground down? Tom texted again. "Manager's invoices look fake. Shell company routing." Madison's listed as administrative contact. When I read that, something in me clenched and opened at once. Betrayed, furious, devastated, humiliated, all of it braided together. I started leaving small breadcrumbs in public places. A comment under a LinkedIn post neutral, curious. An email to a producer who'd worked with Ethan. "Have you heard about the compliance review?" Asked casually, as if I was a concerned colleague. My words were surgical, precise. I wanted whispers that would reach ears I couldn't. People noticed. People talked. A junior producer reached out to me, trembling with questions. "We're concerned about the accounting," she wrote. We had no idea. Her message was small. It struck like a stone. Ethan tried to spin. He posted a video, bright and smiling, thanking fans for support. He called friends-in-law. He tried to keep momentum both of his career and of the story he wanted to be true. But momentum is fragile when the foundation is rotting. At night, I walked the neighborhood. The house looked the same. White shutters. The maple tree shedding leaves in the wind. Normal. Ordinary. Safe. It felt like theater. The audience didn't know the set was rigged. I didn't celebrate loudly. I didn't dance on any graves. Revenge had never been about spectacle for me. It was about restoring balance, about making sure truth and consequence walked into the same room. But there was a new problem, something I hadn't predicted. A piece of paper Tom found, an email thread between Ethan and someone-in-law, that suggested the transfers weren't just to buy furniture. They were to cover a gap big, ugly, and expensive. Embezzlement, or at least a breadcrumb toward it. If that was true, the stakes had just gone from personal to criminal. Lawsuits could turn into indictments. Careers could implode. My fight had become a thing that could ruin people in ways I hadn't planned. I felt a flicker of uncertainty. I had wanted him to hurt, not to watch his life burn with flames I might later regret starting. Then I realized I wasn't the only one who deserved truth. There were dozens of faces in the production company who trusted him, employees who would be blindsided. I had to keep going, for them, and for myself. I closed my laptop. I poured a cup of tea. My hands shook, not from fear this time, from the realization that the war had widened. What I did next would decide whether this became proof or punishment. I realized something important. The story wasn't only about Ethan. It was about the people he dragged behind him, the ones who trusted him, the ones who would be crushed if everything came crashing down without warning. So I did the thing that felt the most dangerous. I reached out to Madison. Not with fury, not with threats, with a question. A soft, carefully measured note. Do you want to meet? Coffee? I think we should talk, she replied faster than I expected. She said yes. She used 3 exclamation points and a heart emoji. She called me the next day, nervous and bright. I just want to understand, she said. I didn't know about her voice cracked on the last word. I almost believed her. We met at a cafe halfway between their apartment and mine. A neutral place. People who don't know you watch without judgment. I arrived early. I wore no makeup. I wanted the humiliation on my face to be honest. I wanted her to see what he'd called pathetic up close. She was younger than the photo suggested. She smelled like citrus and new perfume. Nervous energy hummed from her like static. She sat across from me and smiled an apologetic smile. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't know he was married. He told me he was divorced. Her words landed like stones. I felt anger flare hot, unfair. I also felt a strange, sour sympathy. Between fury and pity lived something complicated. I kept my voice steady. Did he tell you about accounts? About payments? About a house in Seattle? The HR meeting was colder than I expected. Not temperature tone. Fluorescent lights. Hard chairs. The kind of room where people say things that sound official and mean everything. Maya sat at my left. Madison sat at my right. I felt like a conductor with an orchestra I hadn't hired. Madison's voice trembled. She told them everything she knew. The dinners with Ethan, the promises about law, the vague mention of a relocation package. She handed over messages, screenshots, dates. Her hands shook as she passed the phone to the compliance officer. I watched her confess like someone stepping off a cliff. It's true, the officer said, writing fast. This helps. Relief washed through me, immediate and dangerous. Relief tastes like champagne and ash, but nothing is simple. Not in life, not in war. Within 48 hours, Ethan's lawyer sent a letter. Formal, polite, threatening in the way polished people threaten. He accused me of harassment, of trying to sabotage his career, of fabricating documents. He called my actions malicious and vexatious. He demanded I cease contact with company employees. He wanted me to stop posting, stop emailing, stop breathing on their narrative. Part of me wanted to laugh out loud. The man who texted, "You're pathetic," wanted to paint me as unstable. The irony made me taste bile. But the other part, cooler, understood the strategy. Men with resources play chess until the other player runs out of pieces. He tried to drown me in noise. So I did the opposite of noise. I stayed precise. I sent a crisp reply through Maya. Facts, documents attached, proof, no melodrama, no tears, just evidence. The kind that makes lawyers comb their hair and curse quietly. The company launched a formal internal review. The newsfeed picked up whispers. Rumors became a thread on the industry forum. The production company's name was paired with words like audit and misconduct. That's when the counterattacks got creative. Anonymous posts appeared, thinly veiled smear attempts about my professionalism. A former client claimed I'd missed deadlines. A commenter called me bitter. It stung. People judged what they saw. In the world's shallow light, the loudest version of truth wins. Tom called. They're pushing back, he said. Ethan's legal team is aggressive. They want you quiet. He paused. Also, there's something else. A woman-in-law posted a story. Not Madison. Someone else. She hints at a long-term affair. Different name. My chest tightened. A new betrayal. Like opening a wound I thought I was stitching closed. Fury flared hot and then cold. Devastated. Humiliated. Not from the new woman though, that bite stung, but from the scale of the deception. Ethan had built a life on corridors I hadn't walked down. I'd been the stagehand while he rewrote the script. I realized then that retaliation would come at a cost. He'd tried to make me small, to paint me as hysterical, to weaponize the world's quickness to believe a man in a suit. I had to be smarter, louder in truth, not in tantrum. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and read the lawyer's letter again. The words blurred. I folded them carefully and placed them on top of the pile of documents. The house felt different, like a courtroom with dim light. Like something waiting. I'd won witnesses. I'd ruffled the surface. He'd counterattacked. And now a new secret had surfaced that could change everything. I wasn't ready to see the full map yet. Not until I knew where the deepest lines led. Tom wasn't wrong. There was another woman. Her name was Lydia Brooks, and unlike Madison, she wasn't trying to hide. She posted pictures. She tagged him. She called him my man. Scrolling through her feed felt like driving past a car crash, sickening, hypnotic, impossible to ignore. There they were, Ethan and Lydia, hand in hand at some charity gala, his arm around her waist, that same smug smile. A month before our anniversary, I felt my pulse throb in my throat. Not heartbreak anymore, just heat. Betrayal on top of betrayal. But what hit harder was the pattern. It wasn't just infidelity, it was strategy. Ethan didn't fall in love. He collected women like business deals, each one giving him something he could use. Madison, access inside the company. Lydia, investor contacts, networking events, exposure. Me, stability, a house in Seattle, clean finances, a respectable wife for his professional image. Every part of me that had once loved him was gone now. What was left was a clear, precise purpose. So I called Lydia. I told myself it was curiosity, but deep down, I knew I wanted confirmation from her lips. I used a calm tone when she answered. Hi Lydia, my name's Rachel Monroe. You don't know me, but I think we share a connection. A pause. Then laughter, tight, awkward. Oh, you're her. The wife, yes, I said evenly. The former wife. Silence stretched, and I could almost hear her calculating what to say. I didn't know you were still married, she said finally. He told me you were separated. He said you were unstable. There it was. His favorite weapon. She's unstable. The line he used every time I started to see too clearly. I could have exploded. I didn't. Instead, I spoke quietly. Lydia, you seem smart. So let me give you a gift information. You're in photos tied to a man under corporate investigation. And every dollar that touches his name is about to be reviewed. Her breathing changed. She whispered, What do you mean? Look up the production company's audit filings, I said. You'll understand by morning. Then I hung up. That night, I didn't sleep. My phone lit up past midnight with missed calls from Lydia, then from Ethan, then from an unknown number, probably his lawyer. I didn't answer. In the morning, Lydia posted a cryptic story. Some people wear masks so long, they forget who they are underneath. It spread fast. People in the industry started talking again. Madison had already given HR her statement. Now Lydia, the new PR darling, was hinting at betrayal. It was like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. By evening, I got an email from the production companies. Bored, formal, cold. They thanked me for bringing irregularities to their attention and said further action was being considered. Translation. They found something. Ethan texted again that night. You think you've won? You have no idea what you've started. I stared at his message, smiling faintly. He was right. Because what I'd started wasn't just revenge, it was revelation. And for the first time, he was the one afraid of what came next. By the time the news broke, I didn't feel joy, just silence. The kind that follows thunder. It started as a short piece in a small industry blog. Production executive under internal review for financial misconduct. No names, no details, just ripples. Within hours, the ripples turned into waves. Lydia's cryptic posts, Madison's quiet cooperation. The documents Maya had accidentally allowed a journalist to glimpse. Together, they built a narrative, a truth, and Ethan's name landed right in the middle of it. By nightfall, a reporter camped outside the Los Angeles office. The company released a bland statement. We are aware of the allegations and are conducting a thorough review. Translation. He's toxic. We're cutting him loose. Tom sent me a picture. Ethan walking out of the office, jaw tight, phone pressed to his ear, cameras flashing. The man who had texted "You're pathetic" now had the world watching him unravel. He called me that night. I didn't answer at first, but after the sixth missed call, I picked up. "You did this to me," he hissed. "You ruined my life." "No," I said softly. "You did that all by yourself." He exhaled hard, a sound somewhere between a sob and rage. "You think they'll believe you? You're nothing without me. I was nothing because of you," I whispered. "Now I'm finally something." The line went dead. And with it, 8 years of silence I didn't know I'd been carrying. The next week was chaos for him. His accounts were frozen. The shell company was exposed. Madison's testimony led to a full-blown investigation. Lydia deleted every photo, then issued a public statement. I had no idea. The internet, of course, had a field day, but me? I went on living. Quietly, I painted the guest room. I cooked for myself again. I stopped checking my phone every 10 minutes for proof that I still existed. And then, one afternoon, a delivery arrived. A thick envelope from Ethan's lawyer. Inside was a single sentence. "Mr. Monroe has chosen to forfeit all claims to the Seattle property." I stood in the doorway, sunlight cutting across my feet, and laughed until I cried. Not because I won the house, because I finally won myself, but stories don't end neatly. 3 days later, Maya forwarded me an email. The DA's office had opened a preliminary case: embezzlement and fraud. Ethan's name was on the list of persons of interest. I didn't celebrate. I just watched the sunset from my porch and whispered to no one in particular. Sometimes karma just needs a little push. And if you're watching this, tell me, what would you have done? Would you have stayed quiet and moved on? Or would you have burned the truth into the world, no matter the cost? 6 months later, I found myself back in Los Angeles. Not by choice. By closure, the district attorney's office had subpoenaed me as a witness. Ethan's trial had begun. State of California vs. Ethan Monroe. Charges: fraud, falsification of financial records, and misappropriation of client funds. Walking into that courthouse felt like walking into the final scene of a movie I never agreed to star in. He was there, sitting at the defense table in a gray suit that used to make him look powerful. Now it just made him look small. When his eyes met mine, something flickered. Shame? Fury? Maybe both. I sat quietly behind the prosecutor's table, heart pounding, palms sweating. "Mrs. Monroe," the lawyer began, "can you confirm this is your ex-husband's signature?" I looked at the document, one of hundreds we'd uncovered, and nodded. "Yes, that's him." Ethan didn't even flinch. But when they played the voice recording his own words bragging to a coworker about moving client money for a rainy day, his shoulders stiffened. It was like watching a dam crack. Slowly, painfully, inevitably, after hours of testimony, the judge called a recess. Outside the courtroom, I stood by the vending machine, sipping water, when Ethan walked by, escorted by his lawyer. For a moment, he stopped. Looked right at me. "You happy now?" he asked quietly. I stared at him, really stared. This man who had once shared my bed, my dreams, my entire 20s. "I'm not happy you're here," I said. "I'm happy I'm not." He didn't respond, just walked away, the sound of his handcuffs echoing down the hall. The verdict came 2 weeks later. Guilty on all counts. Sentence: 8 years in federal prison. When the judge read it, I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just exhaled. For the first time in years, it didn't hurt to breathe. Outside, reporters swarmed, shouting questions. "Mrs. Monroe, do you have a statement?" I smiled faintly and said, "Yes." Don't ever let someone convince you silence is strength. Sometimes speaking up is the only way to survive. The clip went viral that night. Thousands of women commented, wives, girlfriends, single moms, all saying the same thing. "Thank you for not staying quiet." That night, I sat on my hotel balcony overlooking the city that had once taken everything from me. Now it was just lights, distant, harmless. The air was warm, the kind of calm that comes after storms. I opened my laptop and began typing something new, my story. Not his version, not his lies, mine, but then something unexpected happened. A message appeared in my inbox from someone I didn't recognize. Subject line: "You don't know me, but I know him." And the first line of the email made my heart stop. Ethan wasn't working alone. I read that email at least 10 times. Each word cut deeper than the last. Ethan wasn't working alone. He wasn't smart enough to pull it all off. Check the contracts from last spring, the one signed under AM Strategic Consulting. That company doesn't exist. The message ended with no name, just initials. JD. For days, I couldn't think straight. Ethan was already in prison. His assets were frozen. His reputation destroyed. Who else could possibly be involved? That night, I pulled up the files Maya had helped me organize before the trial. And there it was, AM Strategic Consulting, listed as a vendor for multiple six-figure consulting fees. Every invoice had the same signature. Not Ethan's. It was Lydia's. My stomach dropped. The same woman who'd been posting quotes about healing and self-worth online had been quietly funneling money into her own shell company right alongside Ethan. I drove straight to Maya's place the next morning. She took one look at me and said, "You found something." I slid my laptop across her table. She scanned the documents, eyes narrowing. "Oh my God, that's her handwriting." She was in on it. We sat in silence, both of us realizing the same thing. Lydia had turned on Ethan the second things went south. She leaked just enough to make him the scapegoat while she walked away clean. She let him burn for her crimes, I whispered. Maya nodded. And she probably thinks no one will ever connect the dots. I could have called the DA right then. Could have handed over everything. But a part of me wanted to see her face when she realized I knew. So I waited. 3 days later, Lydia posted a new photo, some glossy PR shot announcing her as a creative consultant for a new streaming company. Her caption read, "New beginnings are the best revenge." I almost laughed. Fine, I thought. Two can play that game. That night, I drafted a letter, anonymous, clean, meticulous. I sent it to the company's board of directors. Attached every document linking Lydia's consulting firm to Ethan's fraud. Then, just for poetic symmetry, I sent her a copy too. No words. Just one line in the subject. "You should have picked your partners more carefully." By morning, her account was deactivated. By afternoon, her name started trending, Lydia Grant under investigation, and by sunset, the same Los Angeles news channel that had covered Ethan's fall aired another headline. New evidence emerges in Monroe embezzlement case, second suspect identified. I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, heart strangely calm, not triumphant, not bitter, just finished. Revenge doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like quiet justice, slow, inevitable, undeniable, but life wasn't done surprising me yet. Because the next morning, as I opened my front door, a car I didn't recognize was parked at the end of my driveway. The driver rolled down the window. It was JT, and when he stepped out, I realized this wasn't over. Not even close. He looked older than I expected, late 40s, maybe early 50s, with tired blue eyes and a scar that cut through his eyebrow like punctuation on a hard life. He didn't smile, just nodded like he'd been rehearsing this moment. "Jessica Monroe?" "Yes, I'm JD, he said quietly. "Jason Turner." I worked with Ethan and Lydia. My heart kicked hard. The morning sun felt colder suddenly. "I'm not here to hurt you," he added quickly, hands raised. "I'm here to explain why all this happened and why you were never supposed to find out." He handed me a small flash drive. "No labels, just metal and truth. I kept everything," he said. "Emails, contracts, wire transfers." Ethan wasn't the mastermind. Lydia wasn't either. They were puppets. Puppets of who? I asked. He hesitated. "The man funding their projects. The same one who paid them to bury investors' money in shell accounts. He runs a hedge fund in New York. Big name. You'd know it, then why come to me?" Because you're the only one who ever stood up to him without even realizing it. When you exposed Ethan, you started something none of us could stop. He looked around nervously before continuing. They're trying to make this disappear, Jessica. You're a liability to them now. My hands trembled as I took the flash drive. So what do I do with it? You finish it, he said. You end what you started. Then he got in his car and drove away, leaving me in a cloud of dust and questions. That night, I opened the files, and my blood ran cold. Hundreds of pages, offshore accounts, fake companies, donations under false names. At the center of it all, Robert Klein, CEO of Atlas Hedge Partners, Ethan, Lydia, Jason, they'd been middlemen. Robert was the puppet master. I didn't sleep that night, because now it wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. The next morning, I called the DA's office again. When I told them what I had, the line went silent. Then, Mrs. Monroe, bring it in. Right now, the investigation widened within weeks. The FBI got involved. Robert Klein's empire started to crumble, one leak, one subpoena, one headline at a time. When the story broke, my name wasn't mentioned. I'd asked for that, but every major outlet carried the same line. Anonymous whistleblower exposes multi-million-dollar fraud network. I didn't need fame. I just needed peace. Months later, I stood by Ethan's prison visiting room. He'd requested to see me. For a moment, I almost walked away, but curiosity won. He looked thinner, older, broken. You did all this, he said. The whole house of cards. You pulled it down, I nodded. And you helped build it, he sighed. You were always stronger than I thought. I leaned closer. No, Ethan, I just stopped being afraid. When I left, I didn't look back. The past was finally behind bars, both literally and inside me. I drove up the coast that evening, the Pacific stretching wide and endless beside me. For the first time in years, I felt free, not because I got revenge, but because I reclaimed my voice. If you're watching this, tell me, what would you have done? Would you have burned it all down for justice, or walked away and started over? Sometimes revenge isn't destruction. Sometimes it's restoration, and this time, it restored me.